we worked on the book again and wrote a whole chapter called Heart-to-Heart Talks, and to address how to speak to children on a heart-to-heart level. I want you to look with me in Proverbs 20 and verse 5. Purposes of a man's heart, that's a generic term. We can say the purposes of someone's heart are deep waters, but a person of understanding draws them out. People are deep. Even children have deep things going on in their minds and hearts. Some kids are open to talk easily. Other kids, it's harder for them. Jerry and I had 4 kids. I always said, how do we produce such four different people out of the same gene pool? I said, and Jerry and I are working on 4 PhDs, Elizabeth, David, Jonathan, Alexander, that were never fully awarded. But folks, drawing out a child, what they're feeling and thinking inside is one of the most important things you'll ever do in getting close to them, helping them, and helping them overcome things and one day find the Lord. It's talking to them about what's really, really on their heart. And it takes, but you have to draw it out. Some kids do talk more freely. Others are not, or others may talk a lot but still not tell you what's really down. It takes effort to learn how to do it, and it is a bit of an art form, but we can learn it as parents. I had to learn it. Jerry and I both had to learn it. Proverbs 23:26. You're going to hear this quoted in a minute by my son. My son, give me your heart. Proverbs 23:26. Let your eyes keep to my ways. I remember reading this to David when he was a teenager. He said, son, we're drifting apart from each other. I'm giving you my heart. I want you to, if you don't feel that, please tell me, but give me your heart too. And it changed our whole relationship. Heart-to-heart talks. Because why? Because now you're not just trying to control behavior. Behavior is important, but you're starting with the inside. Jesus said, cleanse the inside of the cup, and the outside will take care of itself. So rather than just trying to control what they do, you're saying, how do you think? How do you feel? What do you believe inside? That's the key to behavior, inside out. And it also, it'll get you close to them, and that'll reward you for a lifetime. I had to work on this with all of my kids, but it's paying off now that they're in their 30s, most in 20s and 30s, and one is 40. We're still close now, but we had to work on that a lot when they were growing up. How do we get close to each other? By the way, heart-to-heart talks aren't always negative. They're just not saying negative. It's loving. It's warm. It's what are you really thinking? Here's how I really feel. And oh boy, it's not just only when there's a negative thing to be overcome that you have a heart-to-heart. It's you learn to do it all the time. To learn more about this, let's see what my own kids had to say. Here we go. There's Elizabeth when she was a little girl. And now here she is, we're going to see, as a grown woman and raising 4 kids of her own.
Hi, I am Elizabeth. I am Sam and Jerry's oldest daughter, and I wanted to share a little bit with you about the idea of having heart-to-heart talks with our kids. Sometimes we hear that phrase and it sounds so intimidating and intense, like heart-to-heart talks with my kids. What is that? It sounds very serious and scary. It's really not. One of my favorite quotes on this is from an author named Catherine M. Wallace, and this is so beautiful, and it says, listen earnestly to anything your children want to tell you, no matter what. If you don't listen eagerly to the little stuff when they are little, they won't tell you the big stuff when they're big, because to them, all of it has always been big stuff. And it's such a convicting, saying that she has here. I always think, oh my goodness, am I listening to my kids? But really, I think this sums up so much of how we can lay the groundwork for having heart-to-heart talks with our kids, that it begins by just listening to them, by caring about what they care about, by being engaged and invested in their daily life, whether their daily life revolves around Legos like it does for my son, or Ninjago, or whether it revolves around gymnastics or drama at school among the 4-year-olds playing princess and who gets to be the biggest princess and who gets to be Elsa versus who has to be Rapunzel. It starts with caring about those little things while they're little and drawing those things out of our kids. And if we lay that groundwork where they always share their life with us, then we're gonna be fine as they graduate to the bigger stuff. And this is something that I'm so grateful for, just the way my parents handled it, because I always felt like they cared about my life. They cared about my clubs, they cared about my sports, they cared about my friends, they knew my friends. And so they would regularly just ask me, hey, so how is that going? You were worried about this, what's going on? It was so natural for me to want to share my life with them because they cared, and they had always cared. So I think if you're feeling intimidated, don't feel intimidated. It starts with just listening and asking a lot of questions. I think my parents did a great job of just making the environment in our home naturally very spiritual. We didn't always have to have big talks about God. God just came up frequently in conversation. We'd be sharing about a problem at school and mom would just casually slip a scripture in there before you knew what was happening, and she'd be like, you know what God might want you to do there is, be the one who's kind, or be the first to forgive. And she just bring God in very easily, not a lot of fanfare and hype of, now let's have a big spiritual talk. God was just naturally a part of things. And so I think the older we got, the more that translated into meaningful heart-to-heart talks that helped us to build faith, to become Christians, to hang on to our faith when it got hard. It all built up over time. It was very natural. My mom did a really wonderful job of just always making me feel like she was available, even though I'm sure she was stressed out all the time. She had 4 children. She worked a full-time ministry job. I mean, now that that's sort of my life, I'm like, how did she do that? She never made me feel like a burden or an interruption. She was just very good at saying, okay, so what's going on, and dropping what she was doing and giving me her full attention. She even would sometimes, say to the other kids, hey, it's Elizabeth's turn right now. You guys need to leave us alone so we can have this talk right now. That meant so much to me. I felt so important to her. I never felt like she was too busy to hear what I had to say. Too busy to bear the burden of my problems. She made me feel normal. She shared her own weaknesses, her own stupid teenage moments. It made me want to confide in her. My dad was great about making special times with each of us. My dad would take me running when I was little, and he would, probably starting when I was about 8, he would say, do you want to go to the track and go running with me? And I would be like, yes, I get you all to myself. And I would just run my little heart out. My little legs would be, pumping so fast trying to keep up with him. But that was just priceless time to me. We weren't even talking about anything, but to me, that was a heart-to-heart talk all its own. That was me being alone with my dad doing something that we both really loved. And he did that in different ways at all the different stages of my life. Hey, let's go see a movie. That was it in high school. We'd go see movies all the time, and we might have a talk on the way home, or we might just talk about the movie. But he always made time for me. We'd go on walks. We'd go out for hot chocolate. He and my sister had a standing Friday morning McDonald's date all through middle and high school, I think it was. So I think with Dad, it was a little bit more organized, whereas with Mom, it was more like, I could vomit out things regularly and overwhelm her regularly with all of my feelings. But that's the kind of stuff that I'm trying to do now with my kids, and I don't do it perfectly, but I try to stay engaged. I try to really care about what's happening daily. I think one of the things that really helps me with my kids is if I ever get stuck, because sometimes you have a kid who maybe is a little bit more reticent and they just don't naturally want to share their feelings or their life, or maybe they don't even know how. It's just not natural for them. Or maybe you have a kid who's going through something and they're having a hard time being open about it. Pray. That is what I do. Every time I'm struggling with one of my kids and I don't feel close, I just say, God, help me connect with this kid. Help me figure out what's going on. Help me to find a way into their heart. Let me tell you, God is so faithful in answering those kinds of prayers. I think sometimes we forget that God loves our kids even more than we do because we can't imagine someone loving them more than we do, but he does, and he longs to partner with us in raising our children. So if you're stumped, if you don't feel connected, if you're having a hard time having those heart-to-heart talks, just pray about it and do your best to be intentional going forward. The proverb that reminds me of this is Proverbs 20, verse 5. The purposes of a person's heart are deep waters, but one who has insight draws them out. Our kids are deep waters. We want to draw them out. Let's just do our best to engage, to connect, to draw them out. And whatever that looks like for you, if it's working for your family, then awesome. It is going to pay off in the long run.
Okay, a couple of more thoughts, then we're going to hear from David and Lisa. Jesus had to get away with his own disciples to have good talks. You say, what you talking about, Sam? Mark 6, verse 31, or verse 30. The apostles gathered around Jesus, reported to him all they'd done and taught. Then, because so many people were coming and going, they didn't even have the chance to eat, he said, come with me by yourselves to a quiet place and get some rest. Think about it. They're out making disciples. They're out preaching the word. They're out healing the sick. But what does he say? Well, we need time together. We need some time alone. And he would give them that time. Children, folks, I would say this. Time spent, time equals love to them. So you heard what Elizabeth said. I didn't realize that her going out and running with me meant so much to her. I didn't realize that me taking Alexandra to the McDonald's, Jerry said she started dressing up on Fridays. I said, she did? I didn't even know that. I just wanted to spend time with them. But, again, I'm not saying that to boast in myself. I'm saying that just trying to do what this book says, and it works. That's all. It's the grace of God. It's not because we're so wonderful. It's because God honors what he says in this book. So let's do that. Don't feel like we're sitting here looking down on you or anybody else you don't know what you... No, that's not my heart. My heart is, I'm glad for every blessing God gave me. I made plenty of mistakes, but thank God for grace, and we were able to overcome it. So I remember we would give you an example of a mistake I would make. We'd be at dinner. We're going to talk more about this too. And I'd be sitting there, and all the kids would be talking and laughing and sharing things, and Jerry would lean over. I already said this. She'd lean over, you're not here. And she'd smile. You're not here. No, you're not here. And I'd say, blah, blah, blah. And I would detach myself from what I was doing and say, hey, kids, how you doing? And that made all the difference in the world. My wife helped me, and I helped her when she had weaknesses. We didn't crack each other. We were nice to each other, and that made all the difference in the world. So let's listen to David here and Lisa. And they're up in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. He's my second child. He's got 3 kids of his own. Uh-oh. It's off. Oh, there we go. All right. There he is when he got married. His dog was the wing bearer, Riley. He said, Dad, he's got to be in my wedding. Oh, okay. All right. That's by the way, that took place in the old Crossroads Church of Christ building. All right. That's Lisa. She's a disciple from New York City. Thank you, Steve Johnson, and all the brothers and sisters there for converting that wonderful girl. There they are with their 3 children. There they are. And now, here we go.
We want to talk about having heart-to-heart talks with our children. Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 6, a scripture that we probably know well. It says, these commandments that I give you today are to be on your hearts. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road, when you lie down and when you get up. We obviously want to impress God's word on the hearts of our children. But I think what is assumed and implied and what is stated here is it says, talk about them. Sometimes, especially dads, we're just not talking very much with our kids. We might be barking at them or telling them what to do, but this passage assumes that we're talking with our kids. And I think this is so key to later leading our children to Christ. We have to be able to talk. And as men, this can be hard. We need help. For me, my wife helps me tremendously in this area of our parenting. Sometimes I think I just get too busy to talk. I think I'm too busy. And Lisa helps me. She says, hey, you need to go talk to them about what just happened. Sometimes I'm way more behavior focused than focused on talking things through. I just want to fix the problem. And Lisa will help me to say, hey, talk it through with him. And other times things just don't seem very important, because to my kid, it's really important. But they're a little kid. I'm 37 years old. So what they're feeling about this situation or this video game or whatever, I'm like, why is that even a big deal? And Lisa will say, that's a big deal to them. Go talk to them about it. And she's hugely helpful to me. I'm going to let her share some things.
Colossians 4, verse 2 through 6, I'm just going to paraphrase. Devote yourselves to prayer, being watchful and thankful. And then later it says, make the most of every opportunity. I think these verses are really great in helping us to communicate with our children. For me, sometimes I can feel like I have to have just the right time and place to have a spiritual conversation with my kids about something that I want to help them with, or for them to tell me something that they're feeling. And I think sometimes when we try to force it, we're not letting the Spirit lead. I know sometimes I've taken my daughter out and wanted to talk to her specifically about some girls that were being mean to her on the playground. And I remember I had a verse ready and I wanted to share it with her. And as I'm trying to share this verse, she's distracted, she's looking all over the place, she's not paying attention to anything I'm saying, and then saying, Mommy, I'm bored. And it was just the wrong time. And I think we have to really pray and then look for the opportunities. And when they happen, we have to be ready and we need to be available. For our children, a lot of times that happens at bedtime. Yeah. And for busy parents, sometimes bedtime is not the most convenient time to have a lengthy conversation with your child. But if it's the time our child chooses to open up, then we need to be available to listen. And I've had women waiting for me downstairs to have a Bible study while I'm putting my son to bed, and had my son burst into tears. I've had to go down and tell the women, you got to start without me because my son needs me to listen to him right now. And sometimes we just have to do that. We also need to be not so busy in our lives that we don't have time to have conversations throughout the day. Sometimes with homework and after school activities and housework and everything, we can just get so busy that we don't have time for those daily conversations to find out how are kids feeling about their day. Yeah. If our lives are that busy, then we're probably too busy. I know this is hard for me because I am not still when I'm home. I am busy, I'm working, I'm cleaning, I'm cooking, I'm preparing for the next day, and sometimes I just need to stop and slow down and take some time to connect with my children and talk with them and listen. And it's very hard for me, and I know it's hard for a lot of moms, but if we want to have good communication with our children, we need to take the time to do that.
We really try just about every night to sit down and have dinner around the table together. No TV, no taking phone calls. And we ask everyone, how was your day? What made you happy today? Did anything make you sad or angry today? And of course we laugh a lot, but those are good talk times. And then we try, this is hard, but we try to schedule, we need to try harder probably, to get one-on-one time, where just one of us can take one of the kids out, even if it's grocery shopping, but to talk about things, not at a time where they're in trouble or it's heavy, but if there's an issue that needs to be talked about, like a behavioral issue or a bullying issue, we could talk about them when there's low stress and it's just we're hanging out. For me, a big issue is just being compassionate and empathetic. And Lisa helps me a lot to just be compassionate and empathetic. Sometimes we have to work together. One time we were dealing with a bully situation with our oldest son, and we had to send the two younger kids on up to get ready for bed while we sat at the dinner table and just asked him questions. I believe it's Proverbs 20 verse 5 talks about the heart has deep waters, but the man of understanding draws it out. And we had to draw him out, and what came out of him surprised us. He was feeling a lot about himself. He was feeling negative about himself. But we had to just, in a non-threatening way, just ask him questions and draw it out of him, and he burst into tears. But I was glad that we worked together. We're trying to learn this. It's so important that we learn. Amen.
Okay, that's David and Lisa talking about how they talk to their kids. We have another video coming here with David sharing about a talk that we had back when he was a teen, the one I referred to a moment ago. Hang with us on the videos here, guys. All right, here we go.
I remember one particular heart-to-heart talk that my dad and I had when I was a teenager. I was a young disciple, and this talk was the culmination of several weeks or months where there was a lot of tension and friction between me and my dad, mainly because I was being a teenager, and everything he would say to me, I had a better idea of how it should be done. I had my own opinion. And this particular morning, I was just in the kitchen. I was making my oatmeal, and I was making it incorrectly. And my dad walked in the kitchen, and he said, "Son, you're making that oatmeal wrong. Let me show you how to do that." And of course, I argued with him and said, "Dad, no, I know how to make my oatmeal." And it was really stupid. It was just dumb. And Dad said, without getting angry, he said, "Son, come on, let's go outside. Let's sit on the deck. We need to talk about some things." And he just explained to me how he'd been feeling, that everything was an argument. And then he asked me to read this scripture in Proverbs chapter 23, starting in verse 22. It says, "Listen to your father who gave you life, and do not despise your mother when she is old. Buy the truth and do not sell it." And it goes on from there. And down in verse 26, it says, "My son, give me your heart and let your eyes keep to my ways." And when I got to that last line, I started to cry, because it says, "My son, give me your heart." And I realized that I had been pulling my heart back from my dad through all these silly arguments that we've been having. And my dad had always told me from the time I was very little that we were going to be close. That he wasn't particularly close to his dad, but he wanted us to always be close. And so we had a good talk right there on the deck about just me giving him my heart and not pulling my heart back, not being argumentative. And it really helped us to be close.
And we're still close today because of that. Look in James chapter 1, verse 19. How do you have heart-to-heart talks? Well, kids are going to say things that provoke us to come right back pretty strong. And sometimes we have to hold off a little bit. Not that we don't end up saying what needs to be said, but listen carefully. What does the Bible say? James 1:19. Dear brothers and sisters, take note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to become angry. Man's anger does not bring about the righteous life that God desires. Our kids are going to say some things that provoke us, that are foolish, that are off the wall. But we need to listen. And not that we don't need to deal with it, but we need to listen carefully before we speak. Look in Proverbs 18:13. And there are more verses on this, by the way, through the scriptures. We're just giving you a sampling here. Proverbs 18:13. He who answers before listening, that is his folly and shame. Sometimes your kids will start talking and we'll interrupt them. Watching the news these days, watch how the reporters and people on the news interrupt each other all the time. They're talking at the same time. I'm like, what? You're just making your own point. You're not listening to each other. You're not really hearing the other person out. You're coming back. Folks, in raising kids, this will be a big challenge. I mean, it was for me and Jerry. We had to learn to listen carefully. Get all the facts before you render a judgment or an opinion. They say, oh, this happened, somebody hurt my feelings, or I did that, or I dropped this, or broke that, or find out, well, what happened? Tell me more. Ask a lot of questions before you start immediately coming at them, when they're little or when they're older. Get the facts before you render judgment or an opinion. If not, we exasperate them. What are parents told not to do? Exasperate your kids. Tell me, when you're trying to share your heart with somebody and they keep interrupting you and preaching at you, or trying to, doesn't that you're not hearing me out. We need to, if it exasperates you, realize, I don't want to do that. And I'm a disciple and I'm a mature person and it bothers me. How much would it bother a 5-year-old or a 15-year-old? I need to listen carefully as a parent. I'm not saying don't give them the teaching they need. I'm not saying that. I'm saying hear them out. Then when you do speak, what will they know? My mom heard everything. My dad heard everything. Now they're telling me what I need to do. But they know everything before they give me. So you may even be saying the right thing. But if they think you didn't hear them out fully, then it's going to be hard for them to hear you say even the right thing. Or if you react too quickly, you may say the wrong thing because you don't know everything yet. I've reacted to situations. We all tempted, aren't we, guys, by pride and anger, to react quickly to something rather than, wait, tell me more, tell me more. Even if they're clearly in the wrong, hear them out before you react. Some questions to draw them out. I've got them here. They're all in the E8 book, by the way. Say, they tell you something happened. Say, well, and then what happened? Is there more? Really? What else? And what happened after that? Get all the facts. And then you ask, well, how'd you feel about it? I was discouraged. I was hurt. I was mad. I was scared. I felt terrible. I wanted to kill them. How'd you feel? Then say, well, those are the facts. Get the facts, then get the feelings. Facts, feelings, then get the feelings, then get their thoughts. What do you think? What do you think about it? Tell me your opinion about it. And then if you don't understand, say, can you help me understand more about that? What were you even doing there? Why did that guy come up to you? What were you doing in that room at that time? Help me understand more. And share with, then also, I say another way to have heart-to-heart talks with kids is like when they're going through a bullying time or something's hurting them, say, I went through something like that when I was your age. And they say, really? Sometimes we forget what it's like being a kid. They go out on a date and they get their feelings hurt, or somebody does this or that to them. Let them know some things you went through at their age, and you have to use good judgment in it and be appropriate and not do anything too far out there. But on the other hand, when you went through some challenges at their age, it will help them to know, oh, Daddy, you went through that too. Mommy, you went through that. Oh. Then they feel like, okay, now you know how I feel. Why is it that we love Jesus so much? What does the Bible say about him? He was tempted in all points as we are. And what's he doing up there sitting at the right hand of God right now? He's interceding for us. He's explaining, God, let me explain what that is like. You're not tempted by anything. I was by everything. And he says, he is able, because he's been tempted, he suffered when he was tempted. What does it say? He is able to help those who are being tempted. See what I'm saying? When you let your kids know, I went through that, and that makes us love Jesus even more, because Jesus, whatever I've been through, you've been through it too. You know how I feel. Now, can you help me get over it? No, it's not that he just hears it, but then he says, here's how you grow. Here's how you change. Here's how you do. Then you do address the issues your kids are dealing with. And so you go and you help them do that. So it's a skill and an art form that we as parents will need time to develop. I still have to work on it now with my wife. She'll say something that'll, or my kid, or a grandkid, or somebody in the church, or somebody else. I know. Sam, listen, calm down, relax, listen more, then reflect what would God have you to say, rather than just reacting on the basis of emotion or anger or pride or discouragement, or hear it all out. Now, even as you speak heart to heart, you can't be afraid to correct them. You're still their parent. You do need to teach them how you should have. Here's what you should have done, son. Here's what you should have done, daughter. You got to teach them. Some kids are open talkers, by the way. They'll tell you everything. Other kids, like David, Jerry, Jonathan would always walk in the room and he would talk to me. David, I'd have to take him out and we'd kick the soccer ball for about 20 minutes and then we'd sit down and he'd say, Dad, let me tell you some things. It was after we played. I'm the kind of guy, I want to talk immediately. But David was the kind of guy, let's play and hang out, then I'll talk. So I had to learn to work within his system a little bit there. And so oftentimes the kids that are like a lot like us, we have a hard time with, or even the ones aren't like us, we don't understand them. Work hard to understand their temperament and their personality. And so draw them out. And by the way, I will say again, for fathers especially, moms tend to do better at this than dads do. Tend to be better, easier talkers with the kids. Jerry could have a profound conversation while she was fixing dinner. Whereas me, I had to kind of take a walk or go take him to a restaurant or something like that, and then do things like that. So, and by the way, I would say this, dads too, and even moms, but especially dads, setting a regular time to get with a kid, say every Friday at 10 a.m. or every Friday, it can be 10 during school, or every Saturday at 10 o'clock, we're going to go and spend half an hour together. Then what does the kid know? Well, they know my dad set aside time for me. And it's not because I'm in trouble that we're going out together. We're going out because we always go out. You see what I'm saying, dads? Because otherwise, we can only end up having deep talks when there's a problem. You see what I'm saying, brothers? So set regular times. Now, I had 4 kids. I couldn't meet with all 4 of them every week. But I tried like every other week to take time to be with them by myself. And it would be for a walk or go to, it wouldn't necessarily be for 2 hours or something. And it wasn't always intense. It was just time together alone. And that really, really made a difference. Okay, let me see what time it is here. I'm supposed to finish this at 2:45, 2:50. Question answered. Oh, we're ahead of time again. Questions on having heart-to-heart talks. Any questions on how do we have heart-to-heart talks, or anything you want me to elaborate on or say more about? Yes, ma'am.
You talked about learning to work within their system. I think having raised 2 daughters and then having a son, as a mom, that's been a little bit challenging as he's entered his teen years, where I could ask a lot of questions with the girls, and he doesn't want all the questions. So I hear what you're saying about, okay, go kick the soccer ball, find the ways that are going to draw them out, but do you have any quick sort of...
You mean if you're asking questions and they don't want to have
Right,
that time?
like you're trying to ask those questions to draw them out, and they are resistant to the questions.
Those
Probably because you ask too many. I mean, too much.
Well, I mean, I would try to start having time. Make sure it's not always intense. I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying I'm just doing the best I can here. It's good to sometimes just have time together alone where it's not intense. I also, if Jerry were here, she would have a lot to say. She would sometimes say that the best way to have a deep talk with a kid is driving in the car where you're not looking at them eye to eye. You're not sitting across the table. You're riding in the car together. She said sometimes that's when the kids opened up to her. Mommy. But she wasn't looking at them. She was driving, and they would pour out their hearts in a non-eye-to-eye situation. So each kid's a little different. You're going to have to learn, what do I have to do? And that's where, again, parents should get advice from each other. like there were kids that talked to me more readily than they did to Jerry. There were kids that talked to Jerry more readily than they did to me. We would help each other know how to do that. The teen girls, as girls became teens, they became harder to talk to Jerry. When they were young, they really talked to her. I had to help them, by the way, to respect their mother. I really talked to them about that. So I would say maybe do some things that aren't necessarily intense, but let the intensity or let the depth kind of come out as you're hanging out with them. Maybe that would work. Don't give up. Keep trying. Ask God for wisdom. He'll give you, say, God, open the door. Let God open that door for you. He'll teach you how to do it. Okay? Others?
Thanks for all this, Sam. I appreciate it. You know, one of the things David had said that really struck me was, or someone had said here in my notes, is that, you know, they really want to be, it's what you had said to David, that you weren't close to your dad and you really wanted to be close to your children.
Right.
So I'm a divorced dad, and kids are 16 and 10, and we haven't done any of this stuff. So it's a little terrifying for me as far as how to get started. I really liked what you had said to David. I think that's a really good way for me to start getting an opening into having some of those conversations. Do you have anything else, any other nuggets of wisdom that maybe would help?
Yeah, I would say one thing to let the kids know is, you know what? I really want to be close to you. I want to be I want you to feel comfortable talking to me about anything on your heart. I want to be able to open my heart to you. I want you to open your heart to me. Say that not when there's a problem. Just say that as Dad reaching out to them. Nobody ever said that to me in my whole life as a kid. I remember the first time even I heard the word spoken, somebody told me they loved me. It was at church. I almost ran out the door. It scared me. I went home and told my mother I loved her. She almost, what? Now my whole family says God introduced love into our family. But I would do that. I would say, you know what, as your dad, I want to be close to you. I want to be in you. I want you to know I believe in you. And I would try to find things to encourage them about. When you come across a kid finally doing something right, jump on it. Yeah, you did great. So that when you do, I always try to make it 5 to 1 or 10 to 1. 10 compliments for 1 criticism. Then when you do criticize, it'll be listened to when you do have to deal with difficult. So try to give a lot of encouragement. Tell them, but then say, now let's talk. You know, and it may be they'll open up to you later. You know, it may be they're going to think about it over time. And my dad said he wanted to be close to me. Well, I'll talk to him because something's going to happen to make them want to have a talk. Okay, I hope that helps. Again, I wish Jerry was here. She would have so much profound wisdom for you.
Thanks.
Okay, anything else? Got a couple more minutes, or we can take a break now. Okay, let's take a break. Heart-to-heart talks. We were going to be back by 3 o'clock. Let's take we'll be back instead 10 minutes to 3, okay? Take a break. 10 minutes to 3. That's about 7 minutes.